All right, folks, welcome aboard. I'm Steve Malzberg, and joining me right now is Marc Morano. He is the man who runs the great website, climatedepot.com. Hey, Marc, how are you, sir?
Very well, Steve. Thanks for having me on today.
Well, we're this close. You especially are this close, and I'm holding my, my forefinger and my thumb very close together to the good news. And we don't know for sure as we speak, but all reports indicate that Donald Trump is ready to, in effect, pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement, maybe with caveats. There are some options out there, but what's your hope, and what do you realistically expect?
Well, it appears, and I would say about 85% at this time, that Donald Trump is poised to pull the United States out of the UN Paris Climate Agreement. Now, there's reports he stood strong at the G7 summit last week, stood down the French leader, Angela Merkel. He was just solid as can be on this. Came home, and then senior officials started whispering to the mainstream media that he was going to pull out. And then this morning, there's reports all over the place, including The Hill and several other outlets, the Associated Press reporting that it's a done deal, that he's going to pull out. Now, this afternoon, Steve, given that it's the Trump administration, there's other reports pushing back, saying that a final decision hasn't been made. Keep in mind that Donald Trump with NAFTA announced he was pretty sure going to pull out, and that the last day there was intense lobbying, and he decided to stay in NAFTA and renegotiate. Today he is meeting with a UN Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who is a
proponent. He wants him to stay in.
Yeah, he's a seat at the table guy. I still think that given everything we've seen, that Donald Trump is going to pull out, but it's just not quite final, and we are dealing with Donald Trump here on this. And there's possible variations in how he pulls out and if he fully pulls out.
All right. Well, right. He could renegotiate, as we've heard he might do. He'll pull out, but with the condition that he's going to renegotiate it. He could send it to the Senate, claim it's a treaty, and send it to the Senate where it'll need 2/3 approval, and it'll never get it. So that's another possibility. But let me ask you, the naysayers that predict calamity if the United States pulls out of this treaty, why are they wrong?
Okay, this is where it gets. You have to believe in superstition to actually believe that this treaty could have any impact on the climate or the environment. Now, here's why I say that. Using the United Nations' own scientific claims, models, and economic assumptions and energy assumptions, the treaty over 100 years wouldn't even have a detectable impact on climate. It wouldn't even be able to measure the impact using the UN assumptions. This is according to peer-reviewed paper by a statistician called Dr. Bjorn Lomborg. You cannot come up with a way that this treaty could possibly impact the climate, even if you believe every word Al Gore has ever uttered. It's pure symbolism. The UN has actually admitted the real reason, Steve, for the treaty. They've said this is not even environmental policy anymore. We will redistribute wealth by climate policy. And that's what they want, $100 billion a year slush fund going to governments that are best able to keep their people locked in poverty. This is about central planning, global governance, to use the exact phrase of United Nations officials, and a complete transformation of the way we live, according to the UN climate chief, to make life on Earth not recognizable from where we are. A complete transformation. So this is all about social engineering, central planning, redistribution of wealth, and empowering UN bureaucrats. And even if you believe, as I said, every word ever uttered by Leonardo DiCaprio, Al Gore, the United Nations, this couldn't possibly have an impact on climate.
Now, it's funny, the fake news continues, whether it's by omission or misrepresenting. I've heard it once, I've heard it a million times today from the media, that we would join Syria and I believe Nicaragua as the only countries in the world that haven't signed on to this, when of course China and India, they may have signed on to this, but they're given all kinds of passes to take years and years and years to, meet the requirements or get down to where most industrialized nations are. So it's a fallacy. It's a misleading fallacy when the media says we would join Syria and Nicaragua as kind of the outliers, when China and India are the real problems here.
Yeah, well, first of all, a lot of the climate activists are saying the U.S. is going to be a rogue state. Well, first of all, we were founded basically as a rogue state. We broke off. We do our own thing. It's America first. It's about our sovereignty and what's interest to us. Yeah, they're coming up with all this absurdity. First of all, China. The people will claim, well, President Obama had a big meeting with the Chinese premier last summer, and they agreed that China would be part of this. All they agreed to was China's growth trajectory is going to peak at about 2030, and then they start to stabilize as they get more developed. All China agreed to was continuing what they were going to do anyway. So China gets a free pass. All the developing world gets to have massive increases in emissions. The one that gets punished the most was the United States. Not only do we get punished, but we're the ones that expected to do the lion's share of this wealth redistribution that the UN talks lovingly about. And actually, right before he left office, Obama gave $500 billion to this fund. I don't know if Trump can get that back or if it's officially been distributed yet. That's one of the things we got to find out. But this is what they're after. So, yeah, they're going to try to compare us to all these rogue states. The good news, though, is Eastern European may be following Trump's Clexit or climate exit from the UN climate treaty. Eastern European bloc countries, Poland and other countries, are now talking about watering down and looking at their own form of backing out of this UN treaty. Australia may not be far behind. There's reports that Canada, because they export, I think, over 90% of their coal and oil to the United States, can't possibly adhere to this treaty if the U.S. isn't. So this is a wonderful ripple effect that could happen as long as no one talks Trump out of this in the final hours here.
All right, so tell me why it would be a bad thing. What if Donald Trump shocks us all and says, I'm sticking with this treaty? Would it mean the loss of 6 million jobs and all kinds of restrictions and as you alluded to earlier, a change in our way of life?
Well, that's what the UN wants. Here's the short answer, no. Long answer, yes. And here's what it is. This is the camel's nose in the tent. You'll hear many supporters of this treaty say, even Republicans, sort of the moderate mainstream ones, say, this treaty is, John Kerry had said, this is global shaming. There's no enforcement provisions. And that's true. This is a symbolic thing. Each country came up with their own sort of targets and goals of what they're going to do with emissions, and they're basically saying, you know, if we don't meet them, okay, it's all voluntary. That's the way they start. Remember, the income tax started as a very small, like I think it was 0.5%, not even 1% of the population, only the very wealthy. This is the camel's nose in the tent. Every year they have UN climate summits. Every year they have these meetings. They're going to ratchet it up, and that's their goal. They get us to commit to the goal and the outline, and then they're going to start putting in all the enforcement. Now, Donald Trump's big mistake would be if he stays in it, tries to renegotiate, or just doesn't pay attention to it, is then it becomes codified. Every year that goes by, it becomes more ingrained in our system. And the next president, if we don't get rid of it now, the next president can really ratchet it up. And that's part of the problem. You know, the Department of Education was originally started, and then Ronald Reagan talked about getting rid of it. Well, what happens when you don't get rid of these when you can is they end up getting more and more powerful, more and more budgets, cost more and more money. And so that's the big danger here. If you have a chance to get rid of something like this, you get rid of it now instead of letting it fester and grow. It's like a cancer. You cut it out now when it's a small tumor, because if you leave it in 5 or 10 years, this UN treaty will have these enforcement provisions, will start costing U.S. jobs, and will start becoming a big factor in our lives. And that's why Donald Trump uniquely has an opportunity. And I say uniquely because I don't think a President McCain would have done this. I don't think a President Romney would have done this. I'm not even sure a George W. Bush would have done this if it had already been done. Bush was sort of about preventing things from happening. Trump, uniquely as a Republican president, seems to be rolling stuff back that we haven't seen in a Republican president since Ronald Reagan.
All right, Marc Morano, we shall see what we shall see. Appreciate your time, sir.
All right, thanks a lot, Steve.
All right, folks, check out climatedepot.com and educate yourself. And educate yourself by checking out newsmaxtv.com and, of course, the website newsmax.com. We'll see you next time.